There is a number on a piece of paper sitting inside a warehouse somewhere, and when that number hits zero, your truck dies. Not from miles, not from wear, not from anything you did wrong. It dies because someone in a boardroom decided it should. Parts discontinuation is one of the quietest weapons in the automotive industry's arsenal. It does not make headlines. It does not get legislation. It does not get a recall notice. It just happens. A part number gets flagged as end of life. The warehouse stops reordering, and 6 months later, you are standing in an auto parts store being told the part does not exist anymore. Not backordered, not delayed, gone. And if you think this is accidental, you have not been paying attention. Let us talk about what is actually happening. Automakers don't just build trucks, they build ecosystems. The truck is the entry point, the dealership is the toll booth, and the parts system is the wall they build around you once you're already inside. When a manufacturer decides to discontinue a part number, they're not doing it because the part is obsolete. They're doing it because keeping you dependent on new vehicles is more profitable than keeping old ones alive. Think about what happens when a specific body control module for a 2009 or 2010 truck gets discontinued. That module controls your windows, your locks, your interior lighting, and your cluster communication. It's not an engine part. It's not something a backyard mechanic designed to fix for. And once that part number vanishes from the system, you're not repairing that truck anymore. You're either paying a specialty electronics shop to rebuild a board, hunting a salvage yard before those dry up too, or you're being told by the dealership service writer that the cost of repair exceeds the value of the vehicle. That last line is not advice. That's a sales pitch. Here's where it gets more specific and more calculated. Late-model diesel trucks, particularly built after emissions mandates tightened around 2010, are loaded with components that have narrow manufacturing windows. Diesel particulate filter pressure sensors, NOx sensors, diesel exhaust fluid injectors, selective catalytic reduction modules. These are not parts that a dozen aftermarket companies are racing to reproduce. They're engineered to specific calibration tolerances, and in many cases, the replacement part must be programmed to the vehicle identification number through dealer software before it will function at all. That's not a technical necessity. That's a design decision. And that design decision means that even if you find a used part in a salvage yard, it may not work in your truck without a dealer visit that costs you $200 in diagnostic time before they even touch the actual repair. This is not about emissions compliance. Emissions compliance is the cover story. This is about making sure the truck you paid $50,000 or $60,000 for cannot survive without ongoing access to a system that the manufacturer controls entirely. And it's getting worse. The window for finding usable salvage parts on late-model trucks is shrinking because the trucks themselves are increasingly software-defined at the component level. When modules are locked to a specific vehicle from the factory, a salvage yard full of the exact truck you drive becomes almost worthless to you from a parts perspective. You can't pull a transmission control module off a wrecked example and bolt it in. The software won't recognize it. The truck won't start. The only path forward is the dealer, and that path has a toll. Mechanics have been watching this shift happen in real time. Shops that built their entire business model around buying used parts from yards and doing honest repairs are being squeezed out. The economics of independent repair depend on affordable parts and accessible diagnostics. When manufacturers build systems where the part itself is only half the repair and the other half lives behind a proprietary scan tool subscription, they're not just inconveniencing mechanics, they're bankrupting them. And when the independent shops close, the only option left is the dealership. That's not a market outcome. That's an engineered outcome. Now here's the thing most people don't think about until they're already in the trap. The trucks being discontinued from parts support right now are not ancient. These are trucks from the mid-2000s to the early 2010s. Trucks that are absolutely still working,
still capable, and still worth keeping alive, but the manufacturer's support window has closed, and the aftermarket never fully developed for the more software-heavy systems on those platforms. So you have a truck with a solid frame, a capable engine, decent body metal, and a functional drivetrain sitting in your driveway that gets totaled not by an accident, but by a $70 sensor that you can't source and can't replicate. That's the calculation. That's the design. Which is exactly why mechanics who understand how this works are looking backwards instead of forwards when it comes to their personal vehicles. Not to the newest model year, not to the freshest platform. They're looking at trucks built before the software dependency became structural, before every module required dealer initialization, before parts were engineered to reject themselves unless they were authorized by a corporate server. Pre-OBD2 trucks, carbureted gasoline platforms, mechanical injection diesel engines, old body-on-frame pickups from the late 1980s and early 1990s with iron block engines and manual transmissions. These are not nostalgia. These are not collector cars. These are working tools that a competent mechanic can keep alive indefinitely with nothing more than hand tools, a factory service manual, and a parts supplier that still stocks universal components. The parts are not locked to a vehicle. The modules don't need authorization. The fuel system doesn't communicate with a network. The truck does not report its location. The truck does not go into limp mode because a sensor value drifted slightly outside a software threshold. It runs. You fix it. It keeps running. That's what real ownership looks like. And the industry spent the last 30 years making sure that kind of ownership becomes impossible on anything built after a certain point. So when you hear someone say they found an old truck and they're never getting rid of it, understand what they're actually saying. They're saying they found something that can't be taken from them by a part number going end of life. They found something where the repair path is mechanical, not political, where the diagnostic is a wrench and a factory manual, not a subscription tool with an annual renewal fee, where the fix doesn't require a dealer's permission. They found a truck that belongs to them. The question I want you to sit with is this: how many miles do you have left on your current vehicle before you hit a discontinued part or a software repair wall that forces your hand? Because that number is smaller than you think, and the people who built your truck already know what it is. If this is the kind of information that nobody in the mainstream automotive world wants to talk about, this is the channel that will keep talking about it. Subscribe and make sure you don't miss what comes next.